The story begins in the Jedi Temple hangar. Anakin tells Windu that he just learned the terrible truth. Chancellor Palpatine is the Sith Lord. That wasn't a big surprise to Windu. The Jedi Order suspected for a long time that someone very close to Palpatine was the Sith Lord they've been looking for. But still, the Chancellor himself? How were they so ignorant to let the Sith Lord become the Chancellor? So Windu asked Anakin if he is sure about that. And Anakin immediately, without hesitation, just said absolutely. So Windu made a plan. They have to move quickly if the Jedi Order is to survive. He, Teen, Fisto, and Kolar will go to arrest the Chancellor while Anakin and the remaining Jedi in the Order will evacuate the Jedi from the temple. Windu didn't know what Palpatine's plan was, but he knew one thing. Palpatine was not a fool. Clearly, he had a plan. He didn't know how the Chancellor was intending to destroy the Jedi, but he clearly had some kind of force he wanted to use against them. So Windu told Anakin to evacuate the entire Order to Alaris Prime. There was a massive temple on the planet that could easily house the entire Order until they were sure they could return to Coruscant. Of course, Anakin wasn't a big fan of this plan. He insisted on going with Windu. The Chancellor was very powerful. Windu and the other masters will need his help if they were going to arrest him. But Windu was determined. He told Anakin that he needs him. There was no time for arguing. Anakin was responsible for the evacuation of the temple. So, although Anakin didn't like the plan very much, he would indeed agree. Windu gave Anakin one last piece of advice. Don't tell the clones where they were headed. They might be useful, but they could not trust anyone but other Jedi. After all, the clones were loyal to the Republic, to the Chancellor, not the Jedi Order. Nobody could know where they were going, or the entire plan would be compromised. He watched Windu and the other Jedi leave in the LAAT before he turned and walked out of the hangar with an urgent pace. His mind was constructing a rough plan. He knew where they had to go, but there were still many problems. Where would they find enough transport to evacuate thousands of Jedi? How would he inform the entire Order about what was happening in the first place? So first he ran to the training area near the western lower balcony area, and as he planned, he found Master Kindralig there, instructing young Padawans. He explained the situation in only a few sentences. He simply told Master Dralig that the Chancellor was the Sith Lord they've been looking for. He told him that Master Windu and other council members were on their way to arrest the Chancellor, and Windu gave him instructions to evacuate the entire temple to Alaris Prime. He also explained that they couldn't trust anyone but other Jedi. Sin pointed out that they didn't have the transport necessary to evacuate the entire temple, and it was true, Anakin realized. So they thought about it for a while. Anakin proposed that they could contact some senators they trusted. Mon Mothma, Senator Organa, they didn't like the Chancellor, and their people didn't work for the Republic that was led by this Sith Lord, but were completely loyal to those senators. Sin liked the idea. He had a few senators he trusted very much, and so did Anakin. So from there, Sin and Anakin split into two teams. Since the Jedi Order didn't have a central communication system through which they could immediately reach every Jedi, they would need to do it the old way. Mouth to mouth. So, Anakin would be responsible for the evacuation of the southern part of the temple, while Dralig would evacuate the northern part. From there, the operation spread into smaller and smaller teams. Jedi Masters like Shakti, Jocasta Nu, and Sarah Kato would lead smaller teams of Jedi to the nearest hangars. Personal Padawan rooms were the hardest to inform of the situation. Countless Padawans were sleeping and meditating in their rooms. Masters had to trust other knights and older Padawans to share the message as well as they could and meet them at the hangars. Meanwhile, the Jedi Masters would make their way past the Chancellor's royal guards and into Palpatine's office. Palpatine was, of course, expecting them. So Windu declared that the Chancellor was under arrest, and Palpatine simply stated that this was treason before igniting his saber and jumping at the Jedi. Teen and Kolar fell almost immediately. Fisto followed only a blink of an eye later. Windu was pushed back, but with Vapad, he was using Palpatine's rage and turning it against him. Still, Palpatine advanced with an unnatural speed for an old man, or for any organic being in general. Windu never saw anyone before who spun, sliced, and struck as fast as Palpatine, not even Master Yoda. In the Jedi Temple, Anakin was busy evacuating big groups of younglings. He tried being focused on the task at hand, but it was hard. Windu and the other Jedi could kill Palpatine if he tried fighting back, and if they killed him, any chance of saving Padme would be lost. But still, the task at hand kept him occupied enough, so he didn't think about it too much. He couldn't help Palpatine now. The Jedi needed him. His family needed him. So Anakin contacted Senators Organa, Mothma, Chuchi, and of course Amidala, and asked them for urgent help. He said that he couldn't explain why, but they needed immediate transport, as much as they could get. So these senators got to work, getting ready as many ships as they could and sending them to the Jedi hangar. Dralig did the same, so the transport was taken care of. There weren't many clones in the Jedi Temple, but the ones that were there were confused. Masters simply told them that the operation at hand was extremely urgent, and they couldn't share details, not even with them. Clones were confused, but would indeed not ask any further questions. So Dralig led almost 1,000 Jedi to the north hangar of the temple. Shakti led an even larger group of Jedi to the western hangar, while Jocasta Nu and Anakin led the largest group of the three to the southern hangar. In the hangars, many ships were already landing. The ships were all different designs, different sizes. Some had the classical Alderaanian architecture. Some ships clearly belonged to Mon Calamari, and a few ships in there also had a chrome finish, unmistakably belonging to Senator Amidala and Captain Panaka. Anakin also encountered Rex, who was very confused. He politely asked Anakin to elaborate on his plan. Where was he taking the kids? Why couldn't the clones help? Anakin simply ignored the questions, telling Rex that sadly, it was very classified. Clones could help organize younglings into different transport groups though. So soon, every ship in the hangars would be filled with Jedi. Younglings, Padawans, Knights, and also Masters. The ships were still landing. The support was overwhelming, and the Jedi could not appreciate it more. So the ships took off and climbed the air steeply, trying to leave the atmosphere as quickly as possible. Behind the dozens of Senator ships, suddenly LAATs appeared, shooting their green lasers toward the ship engines. Anakin looked outside and saw that the LAATs behind them belonged to the 501st. Somebody must have stolen their ships. 2 Mon Calamari ships exploded while the other ships broke through the atmosphere and jumped to hyperspace. Sadly, Mon Calamari ships had huge exhaust ports, so they were easy targets. Many Jedi were lost in the explosions, but at least they managed to evacuate most of the Order. The question was, who shot at them? Could Coruscant Guard or Coruscant security forces see their escape as an attack? That was the only explanation Anakin saw for why they would fire. Sure, they broke some rules, and they definitely broke many speed limits, but that wasn't an excuse to shoot at a ship clearly full of people. So, Anakin sat down next to Padme, holding her hand. As the fleet came out of hyperspace to reposition their ships for the next jump, Anakin caught a glimpse of a signal on his comlink. It was, of course, the holonet. Only the holonet had a signal strong enough to catch even in the middle of nowhere. So Anakin played the distorted message. The audio quality was horrible, but the voice was easily recognizable. It was Mazameta himself. He was giving an urgent report to the holonet broadcast. The Jedi turned on the Supreme Chancellor, on the Republic. They were now considered enemies of the Republic. Anyone who knew about any survivors of the Order had to come forward and report the information they knew, so the clones could deal with them. Upon hearing these words, Organa swallowed hard. He and the other senators who helped the Jedi in this operation were now probably considered traitors, but there was no way back. Dralig could only hope that Shakti and Jocasta were all right. They stayed behind to help the remaining Jedi in the temple. They evacuated most of the Jedi, but unfortunately, there were still Jedi in the temple, and now they have been declared traitors and would be executed by the clones if they didn't escape themselves, that is. In the following days, Palpatine took complete control of the galaxy, reshaping the system, declaring the Jedi traitors and public enemy number 1. Teen, Fisto, Kolar, and Windu were declared dead on the public holonet. Most Jedi across the galaxy fell immediately after Order 66 was executed. But Master Yoda survived, because of course he did, and so did Obi-Wan. They would both make their way to Coruscant. They both knew that it was probably not a great idea to go to the capital considering everything, but they had to know what even happened. Why did the clones even turn on them? Was it just them, or maybe, hopefully, not everybody? They both looked in horror as they approached the temple and saw the huge smoke cloud coming from it. As they made their way through the spread out battalion of clones guarding the temple, they finally saw each other, and they both felt massive relief. At least someone, even if just one Jedi, was still alive. So they investigated the Jedi library and the other parts of the temple. Almost everything was completely destroyed, but slowly but surely, they started to piece together the entire picture, the entire terrifying story. The Jedi were executed by clones, but it didn't add up. They found bodies of Shak, Jocasta, and many younglings, but there simply wasn't enough bodies. Sure, clones burned the bodies outside, but there simply wasn't enough destruction, enough lightsabers on the floor, enough blood. So they arrived at only one conclusion. Many Jedi had to escape, so Yoda Yoda decided that he will kill the Emperor. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan would try to find out where the remaining Jedi were. But how? Many transport ships were still in hangars. How did they leave? Where did they leave to? So the only way he could think of to find the remaining Jedi was to find Padme. She could help him understand what exactly happened. And of course, she probably knew where Anakin was. So Obi-Wan arrived at Padme's apartment. He walked across the veranda. That was weird. There was no security anywhere, and Padme was nowhere to be found either. As he made his way to the central area of the apartment, he saw a hooded figure standing in the middle of the room. The figure stepped into the light. It was Anakin. Anakin explained that he expected Obi-Wan to show up. He evacuated most of the Jedi that were in the temple to Alaris Prime. Obi-Wan asked if he came back only to find him. Anakin responded. There was a small smile on his face before he remembered the horrors that happened in the last couple of days. He said that he came to finish what Windu started. Obi-Wan was confused. Is Windu alive? What was he talking about? Anakin explained that Windu went to confront Palpatine with a few other Jedi Masters, but they were declared dead soon after. The Emperor was clearly extremely powerful. Obi-Wan gave Anakin a slight nod before he said that he knew of someone who could help with that. So, they flew back to the temple, sneaked through the new patrol guarding the temple, and found Yoda inside. The Force was radiating from his body. He wasn't kidding when he said he would prepare himself for the confrontation with the Emperor. Obi-Wan interrupted him, saying that he found someone who could help with their goal. So Anakin stepped into the room, and Yoda was most pleased with the sudden turn of events. That night, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Yoda sneaked into the Senate building. They could feel the Emperor from miles away. He wasn't hiding his dark side energy anymore. Yoda told Obi-Wan and Anakin to sneak inside the Senate chamber. They never mastered hiding themselves in the Force. Palpatine would sense them coming. So Yoda made his way past the vast security of the Senate building. He casually walked inside Palpatine's office, lifted his hand, and easily knocked out the two royal guards guarding the entrance. "I hear a new apprentice you have, Emperor. Or should I call you Darth Sidious? Your arrogance blinds you, Master Yoda. Now you will experience the full power of the dark side." From Palpatine's fingers, forks of lightning sprayed in unpredictable patterns. As Yoda was caught in the blast, pushed back into a wall, and briefly knocked out. But Yoda was tough. He stood up, sending Palpatine flying through the room. And so Sidious ignited his saber, and so did Yoda. The Emperor's rule was finally over. The fight started slowly. They tested each other. Simple strikes, simple blocks. But quickly they realized the fight would not end quite as easily. So Palpatine jumped on the Central Senate speaking tower, and Yoda leapt after him. The tower lifted as Anakin and Obi-Wan jumped down from Senate pods, landing next to Palpatine. Now, 4 figures stood on the small tower. Sabers were glowing, reflecting off the polished surfaces as the 4 white sheets slashed again and again. Obi-Wan and Anakin knew they were outmatched. They just tried to keep up and not get killed. But the sheer speed of the real duel happening in front of them was overwhelming. Still, the amount of sabers slashing against Palpatine's red blade was too much. He ignited his second blade, but still, the area was too small. Suddenly, Palpatine jumped high, landing on one of the pods. Robes whipped in the artificial wind of battle. From his fingertips, hatred flared like a living storm. He raised a hand. Pods, massive Durasteel arenas of debate and politics, tore from their moorings and hurtled through the chamber. Obi-Wan twisted in midair, his cloak catching the updraft. A blue blade flashing as he somersaulted clear. Anakin dropped low, sliding across the metallic surface of another pod as one screamed over his head. Sparks rained down. The air was heat, noise, and fury. From below, Yoda raised his hand, calm amid chaos. One of the flying pods halted mid-flight, reversing with unnatural precision. It spun, aimed, and accelerated, firing back toward its sender. Palpatine snarled, barely leaping clear. The pod shattered against the wall behind him, raining Durasteel fragments like shrapnel. The Sith Lord soared again, cape trailing behind him like the wings of a raven, descending to a lower pod. Yoda leapt, a blur of green. His small form landed opposite Sidious with a weight that defied his size. The green blade ignited once more, a spear of defiance. Palpatine raised both arms. Lightning poured from his fingertips, pure dark side energy, a deluge of agony and fury. Yoda caught it midair, hands outstretched, absorbing the storm, but the force of it was too much. His saber flew from his grasp, spiraling into the void below. Sparks exploded in the air like fireflies caught in a hurricane. They stood locked, two titans, ancient and powerful, light and dark. Obi-Wan and Anakin stood atop a higher platform, eyes locked on the fight below. They exchanged no words. There was no time. The Force moved them. Together, they stretched out their hands. A pod creaked under sudden pressure. The bolt snapped. It tipped, spun, and dropped like a falling star. Yoda's eyes flared wide. With a final burst of force-powered agility, he dove backward from the pod just as it crashed down. The impact was deafening. The pod struck the one beneath it, and Palpatine with it. A flash of red light. A final scream. Then, silence. Yoda hit the central floor of the Senate chamber hard, the wind driven from his lungs. He groaned, rising slowly, robes torn, skin scorched. Above, Anakin and Obi-Wan peered over the edge, breathless. Below them, there was only wreckage. Smoke curled from the ruined pods. A single black robe peeked from under the debris, but no movement came. The Sith Lord was still. For the first time in years, the Senate chamber, seat of power, of manipulation, of fear, was quiet, but the war was not yet over. Suddenly the Jedi realized the Coruscant Guard was making their way toward them. They needed to act quickly. So Anakin and Obi-Wan leapt down to Yoda, and together they climbed into small exhaust pumps. They didn't know where to go. They opened the hatch. The Coruscanti wind came crashing into the tube. Behind them, they heard the sounds of clones. They looked at each other, and then, one by one, jumped into Coruscant's dark night. They were falling for a while. They all landed on different parts of the Senate District's lower city, but soon they found each other. From there, they flew to Alaris Prime. On the planet, they flew toward one of the biggest Jedi temples ever built. They were greeted by Chindralig. Many senators were still with the Jedi, since they were now the enemies of the Empire. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and of course, Padme were still there. Finally, Anakin could spend some time with Padme. The stress of recent events had kept him busy, but no more. He had to make sure that she and the baby stayed safe. In the following months, Padme gave a healthy childbirth to twins, Luke and Leia. The Empire grew strong, even without Palpatine. Maz Amedda was declared the new emperor, but the Jedi were still very much present, and with Palpatine gone, the Jedi knew that brighter days would soon follow. Almost half of the Order was preserved, and nobody knew their location. Even the Grand Master and many council members survived Order 66. So, with the Sith threat gone, the galaxy would soon see brighter days.